I have referenced this many times in my videos before, and I'm not ashamed to admit to it. When I was in high school, I was very opposed to feminism, social justice, and yes, political correctness. However, I was able to shake off those quite honestly toxic ideas, and I began to research these topics for myself, and looking into these ideas for myself rather than through the lens of some random skeptic on YouTube. The first thing I realized about political correctness was that I was lied to about what it was on a fundamental level. I'm sure many young people believe political correctness is some sort of attack on free speech or some kind of woke movement to shut down people the SJWs disagree with. That's what I was led to believe by the very angry YouTube men I used to watch, but I couldn't have been more wrong about that. Before I actually start talking about political correctness in relation to how it affects comedy, I want to discuss what political correctness is so that we have a baseline understanding moving forward. Political correctness is the avoidance of words, terms, or phrases that marginalize or insult people who are socially disadvantaged or discriminated against. Basically, it's all about not using words that specifically insult a group of people. The basic purpose of political correctness is to treat people with respect. It isn't to limit speech or to attack people for saying offensive things. The basic purpose of political correctness is to treat people with respect. It isn't to limit speech or to attack people for saying offensive things. It is purely and simply to treat people with respect. For instance, when I was in middle school, and even still I hear this today, people would always use gay as a word to describe something that was lame or stupid. I'm sure you've heard people say some variation of "dude, stop, that's so gay." I've heard it all my life, and I continue to hear it be used. Now, although the person who uses the word gay in that way may not be homophobic themselves, what they are saying, the insinuation, is homophobic, without doubt. I don't like it when I hear people say this. It is disrespectful, and quite honestly, it's pretty cringy. Now, I have a pretty thick skin. I've dealt with my fair share of homophobia. I'm not going to get all teary-eyed over something like that, but it is disrespectful, and it's rude, and political correctness is just a push to make people a little nicer to each other. I think we all wish people were a little bit nicer, and that's all political correctness serves to reach. So let's get into the bulk of the video, and that is how political correctness affects comedy. I'm sure you've seen videos where comedians get pissed off and dismantle political correctness because it makes it too difficult to make jokes and it restricts what a comedian can joke about. But here's the issue with that. I do not personally believe the real issue that they are addressing is political correctness. What they are addressing is the vague idea of their jokes not being funny anymore. They're outdated. Times change, and oftentimes I think comedians get left in the dust as they never adapt their material to match modern societal norms. Where comedians actually get caught up is on the concept of punching up and punching down. This is a pretty well-known idea in the world of comedy. Basically, punching up is when a person makes a joke about someone who is more privileged than them, and punching down is the opposite, a comedian making fun of someone who is less privileged than them. And that is a very baseline description of this. Obviously, every case is more nuanced, so let's just set up an example to explain what I mean. Ricky Gervais has this comedy special up on Netflix called Atheist. For a lot of the special, he just makes jokes at the expense of Caitlyn Jenner, a very, very rich transgender woman. Now, one could argue Ricky is not as famous or rich as Caitlyn is, so that would be punching up, right? Well, no. What Ricky does is he jokes about Caitlyn's transgender identity. He makes fun of her not as a rich elite, but as a trans person. Ricky is a cis guy. He is punching down because trans people are less privileged than cis people. It doesn't have anything to do with people being offended or political correctness really at all. Bullying marginalized people for existing has never really been funny. It just makes people feel bad and uncomfortable. When you're there to make people laugh, making bigoted jokes isn't really a good idea. Like, ever. So that is where I think a lot of folks get caught up, and it leads to a lot of negativity aimed at the straw man idea of college snowflakes. There's been this idea created really by the anti-feminist type content creators online that colleges harbor this vast sea of easily offended, very socially aware kids who don't know how to take a joke. This isn't true in my experience whatsoever. In fact, I see the opposite is true. I've been going to college for over a year now, and almost everyone I have met has a very offensive sense of humor, very adult, but they are able to draw a line between being offensive and bullying. This is something you can do. For instance, one thing I see a lot of men do is instead of making a joke at the expense of women, they will instead make a joke at the expense of men who are sexist by imitating a caricature of a sexist person. Now, me explaining that may be confusing, but one comedian who does this extremely well and whom I love is Anthony Jeselnik. He is very offensive, his jokes are very dark, they are very shocking, however, they are also very politically correct. And they always are punching down, even when he's saying something that is sexist or racist. And this is how he does it. When Anthony Jeselnik is on stage, he builds himself up as a character. He makes it very clear to the audience that he isn't himself when he is performing. He is a caricature. He is playing the role of a douchebag, misogynist type. This way, he isn't making fun of marginalized people, he's making fun of racists and bigots and the such who say the things that his characters say. The stereotype of the easily offended college kid just doesn't exist. Don't believe me? Go to college and prove me wrong. Everyone loves offensive jokes and humor. It's when a comedian crosses the border into bullying and punching down that it becomes unfunny. Comedians need to adapt their work and progress their jokes to fit modern taste. That's something that's been happening ever since the dawn of comedy. You can make jokes about trans people without it being bullying. You can make jokes about women that are funny. You can make jokes that are funny and are also offensive. Comedians need to stop blaming some vague idea of a cultural movement on why their jokes don't land anymore. PC culture isn't the issue. It's bad jokes. Okay, let's talk about censorship. Is PC culture responsible for censorship? No. No, it isn't. Political correctness doesn't censor anyone. It does, however, hold people responsible for the things they say. Yes, you can still say as much offensive garbage as you want, but everyone else has the freedom of speech to criticize you and call you out when you say something demeaning or rude. You can't hide behind the shield of "it was just a joke." No one has to just sit there and accept whatever you say. You can be criticized. People do not have to be okay with the things that you say, and you are allowed to be held responsible for the things that you are saying. So, in closing, all I guess I have to say is political correctness isn't some big evil boogeyman that is trying to rip away your freedom of speech, even though the right really wants you to think it is. It's just about treating people with respect, not being an ass. So, I know this video is probably going to upset some people, so if you are one of those people that is offended by this video, please tell me what you think. I would love to get some real great, good faith conversations with you about this topic, because I know how offended people get at the idea of treating people with respect.